hopefully today we won't have any technical difficulties. The difficulties I'm having is getting my hair to actually behave itself. I've been cursed ever since I can remember hair that just sometimes doesn't feel like behaving itself. It just gets in these moods where it's just like, you know what, Paul? I just want you to look like you're so filthy. And so all I do is I just realize, you know what? Most of the time, people don't really think about surface level things like hair, and if they do, then that proves that they're a surface level person themselves. Well, if their highest priority is the hair, because like that would be just that would be so silly if there was a girl out there that just says, Paul, you're amazing and wonderful and phenomenal and awesome, but your hair, and then she decides not to date me for that. That would be so funny. Oh man. You know, the dating world is so funny. Like, so first of all, there are people that date because they want the thrill of being with a significant other. But then there are people that date even though they don't want to get married. But yet, sometimes they date and do stuff that you should be doing when you're married and then freak out because like, yeah, we're not married, but we acted like we're married. But this is terrible. And it just baffles me how they can have such a low set of priorities. It baffles me how I can have so many itches right before a stream starts. So, at the end of the day, I think people have forgotten what it means to date. Like, to me, I date because, well, I haven't dated since 2008. But if I were to date again, it would definitely be for the sake of figuring out if I want to make a long-term commitment with this person in a manner beyond that of simple friendship. Now, I may not be able to ever be perfect at that. I tend to really admire my friends, and I tend to hold on to them pretty hard. And lately, I've been challenged to maybe think if there's a difference between loyalty versus inability to let go. And I talked about it a little bit. And I think the conclusion I've reached is that maybe with certain people, it's hard to let go. But I would think overall, I lean more on the loyalty over the clinginess on the spectrum. And you can feel free to disagree if you want. But from what I have seen, a clingy person is someone that usually wants to get something out of the relationship, while at the same time hardly contributing anything themselves. Whereas someone who's loyal, I mean, yes, obviously you want to get something out of a relationship. You're not just going to want to be miserable. But you're also going to want to contribute to the relationship. You're not just going to be in it because, I don't know, I'm lonely and I need someone in my life. You're also going to want to be in the relationship because you think that you as a person have some unique contributions that you can give to the other person. And then that person can say, you know what, I really appreciate having you in my life. And then if they want to end things, you can be like, well, okay, but just saying, I could be a pretty big help to you in your life. And if you want to go ahead and, I don't know, push that off, that's your prerogative, I guess. I mean, you got free will. Sometimes it's funny that God created free will, you know? Like, he knows that people are going to do stupid things, but yet he gives them the power to do stupid things anyway. Like, surely I can hear the atheists right now, assuming there are any atheists given my count, but the atheists are probably saying something like, well, why did God bother creating free will if people are just going to sin? To which I respond, yeah, God didn't only create free will. He also created reason and logic and a conscience. And so people can choose whether or not to listen to their conscience. To assert our conscience is kind of the counterbalance to free will. Like, yes, the conscience doesn't tell you literally every single step to make, but it gives you that funny feeling in your chest, like, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. And some people just say, to heck with it, I'm just going to do my own thing because I haven't developed my sense of logic and reason. And to which that I say, and you're blaming God for this when you chose to ignore it? That seems like faulty logic to me. Because if God really did create free will just for people to sin, then he also wouldn't have given us our feelings. He wouldn't have given us our gut. He wouldn't have given us that ability to say, something feels funny about this. So at the end of the day, free will is a fickle thing. And at the end of the day, I'm probably just going to end up talking to myself. But then they tried like streaming for a bit, and then I'm about to end the stream, and then someone comes in and is like, no, Paul, I'm here. Oh, man. I just, my cough ruined the joke. But yeah, like, man, I have learned that I have to be really careful with the timing of when I end my streams, because there are people that I guess either they don't see my posts right away, or they don't get to my streams right away. And I get it, like, I stream pretty randomly. Not everyone can come to my stuff. But when I go, oh, is that the time? No wonder why no one's here. Probably still recovering from dinner time. But maybe after the stream is over, I can edit it and make it like, I don't know, call it Life Advice with Paul, what free will is. Something along those lines, that people can look back and be like, oh, okay, so this is just like one of Paul's regular videos. So another thing I was thinking about lately is that some atheists, they like to say that God doesn't exist because, one, you can't prove that God exists. But then the Christians respond with, well, you can't prove that God doesn't exist. Now, I would like to think that I take the middle ground in these discussions, where my perspective would be more along the lines of, well, I think we can establish a possibility that God exists. And even if there's that little bit of possibility, you can't say absolutely 100%, I have figured it out, that he doesn't exist. Because one, a lot of times that's taking subjective opinions, and a lot of those opinions come from your own personal experiences. So it's pretty hard to make an objective statement about religion when you're using subjective factors to come to that statement. So if you take the movie God's Not Dead, there's a scene where the professor is told, do you hate God, by the kid in the class. He says, yes, I hate God. And the kid responds, well, how do you hate something that doesn't exist? Which is a perfectly fine logical argument. Of course, I've heard atheists say that that's a really terrible scene because an atheist professor wouldn't be put into that position. But my reasoning is that a lot of atheists, excuse me, a lot of atheists come to the conclusion later in life that there must be no God. I can't think of too many people that start out as atheists, or they don't at least have some kind of base understanding of the stories of the Bible and the Ten Commandments. And I would also think that if they truly didn't believe in God, then they would take into account all of the evidence in the universe as opposed to just their own little experiences. Now, the same could be said for those of us who are believers, like Paul. You believe in God because you had a miraculous healing on your shoulders. Well, yes, that is a heavy part of it. It is indeed true that I was miraculously healed, and so I definitely don't think it's logical to assume that because I kissed a napkin that healed me. But on the other hand, I also don't want to pretend that I have all the answers. But on the other hand, I also use the common argument of, well, let's pretend that history could go in one of two directions after I die. The first possibility is God doesn't exist, but I believe that he does. So if I take that route, then I can have the hope that a reality like heaven exists. And then I can have that hope that if heaven really exists and Jesus is who he says he is, then that means that I won't have to say goodbye to people in my life that have died. So then there's that distinct possibility that maybe death is not something I should be afraid of, and there's a deeper meaning in life, thus eliminating the possibility of an existential crisis or midlife crisis, because I can say, if Catholicism is true and Christianity is true, and Jesus didn't just die on the cross because he was a lunatic, then therefore, well, all of the stuff that could happen is great possibilities. And from what it seems like, Jesus is doing most of the work. So instead of me worrying all the time about, am I good enough to be saved, rather just accept his saving grace in the first place. So then it minimizes your stress levels. And at the same time, it gives you a future to hope for. I mean, there are people out there that speculate about way weirder things than heaven, and these people get energy out of it. Like they take all this time speculating about the possibility of aliens. Like, I think it's okay to speculate about the existence of God. Now, on the flip side of the argument, you have the people out there that, oh, hello, one person who's in the stream, assuming that my computer is telling the truth. If I'm getting too philosophical for you, well, I guess I'll take that as a compliment, because I didn't think I was capable of being philosophical. So the counterpoint is, if you don't believe in God, and then you get to the end of your life and you realize that God was actually real, but then you also have to ask yourself, if God was real and I've spent my whole life acting like he wasn't. Terry Games, welcome. It looks like you got your channel up and running. So that's cool. I'll be sure to check that out after the stream. What's been going on with you lately? I was just talking about the possibility of if God exists versus if God doesn't exist, and which would be the better logical conclusion. And I'm currently at the part 2 of the conclusion, where there's the possibility that God doesn't exist, or God does exist, but then you get to the end of your life realizing that he does, and you're like, yeah, blah, 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 I really should have believed in God. Then God will try to put your reasoning against you and say, you went your whole life cursing me, saying I did. All of a sudden, you want to be in perpetual union with me. I don't know. Your reasoning's kind of shaky there. Let's clean you up. So then you have extended time, assuming that you're in a state of venial sin. Then you have extended time being washed away by the blood of Christ or by purgatory or both, however that works. There are people among all different walks of religion. And then you think to yourself, darn it, those people in my life reading the Bible, they tried to tell me all this stuff was real, and I failed, and I wish I could just go back in time and change my life over. And then God says, why didn't you? I gave you your conscience. I gave you free will. Why are you not taking it? You had so many opportunities. So for me, I think the most logical answer would be to assume that God doesn't exist, and then get to life realizing that he actually does. Or, even better, assume that God exists and spend the rest of my life thinking that he exists, so that I have not only a rule for how to interact with the world and how to be a good person, but then I also have something to look forward to. It's a win-win. Let's see what you got here. Oh, I know how you feel. For crying out loud, the last live stream I did of this actually took me 5 tries to get it live and running. For me, what I do is I just use Windows Movie Maker. It might be too hard to download nowadays, There's this other program. It's kind of stupid. It's called Mini Tool Movie Maker. I personally don't really recommend it, but it's better than nothing. I'm not exactly a technical expert, but I do hope you're able to get it working, because I would love to see another Catholic that likes games as much as I do. Speaking of which, what games have you been playing lately? Have you tried out the Sonic Colors remaster? The thing is, with all of this ability of mine to make a logical reasoning train, there's always going to be someone out there that has a different train of logic, and it's going to make me look stupid if they try to rebuke it. There could be people out there that say, now, Paul, let me tell you every single reason why your logic is faulty, and let me start with certain things in the Bible that don't make sense. Or they might use the logic of, okay, well, if God exists, then why is this reality the way that it is? And to that I say, well, there are certain things in the universe that science hasn't been able to explain, but science in itself is an ongoing hypothesis. So science is always evolving, and for that matter, if you're an atheist that truly believes in science, then wouldn't the logical conclusion to assume be, at the moment, I might not have proof of God's existence, but if science is an ever-evolving theory, then couldn't it be proven by science later along the line? Mobile games, huh? You know, the only mobile game I ever played, I played two, was Fire Emblem Heroes and Super Mario Run. I didn't really like either of them that much. I might try them again later if they come to console, but from what I heard, Super Mario Run was a big failure, and Heroes was just a lot of fan servicey stuff. I'm not a big fan of that. PC gaming, I've started to really appreciate that Steam exists.